Every Saturday morning, a familiar parade of figures would march across our television screens. A hungry bear in a green tie, a futuristic family in their flying car, a gang of teenagers and their talking Great Dane, always one mystery away from unmasking a monster. They were all born in the same place, a studio in Los Angeles called Hanna-Barbera. But if you were to look for that place today, you wouldn't find it. The studio, which produced over 249 cartoon series and more than 1,200 hours of programming, ceased to exist as a standalone entity in 2001. Its name is now a nostalgic whisper, a brand revived in advisory capacities or attached to new productions by corporate giants. The cartoon empire that once controlled a vast percentage of the children's television market simply vanished. How could a studio that created some of the most beloved and enduring characters in history, a company that became a pillar of pop culture, simply fade away? To understand what happened, we must go back to the beginning, to a world of theatrical shorts and a partnership forged in the twilight of an animation giant. Before they were Hanna-Barbera, they were William Hanna and Joseph Barbera, two men working for a studio that was arguably the king of animation, MGM. William Hanna, a talented musician and illustrator, found his creative complement in Joseph Barbera, a New York native with a gift for drawing and comic inventiveness. They met in 1937, and in just 2 years, they devised an idea for a cartoon series about a cat and mouse duo. This collaboration would produce their most iconic creation, Tom and Jerry. Between 1940 and 1957, the duo created Tom and Jerry shorts, winning 7 Academy Awards in the process. These were the days of full animation, a process where animators drew a staggering 14,000 cells for a single 7-minute short. This was an extravagant and expensive art form, with a budget of roughly $35,000 per cartoon. But the entertainment landscape was changing. As audiences shifted from movie theaters to the new medium of television, the profitability of producing theatrical animated shorts plummeted. In a stunning reversal of fortune, MGM realized it was more profitable to simply re-release old cartoons than to produce new ones, and in 1957 it closed its entire animation division. Hanna-Barbera were suddenly jobless. With the theatrical market gone, Hanna-Barbera looked to the emerging medium of television, a place where animation had no clear foothold. The challenge was enormous. Budgets for television were a fraction of what they had at MGM. A typical episode of their first show, The Rough and Ready Show, had a budget of just $3,000, a mere fraction of the $35,000 they once had for Tom and Jerry. To make a weekly animated series viable on such a shoestring, a new process had to be invented. This was the birth of what would come to be known as limited animation. Limited animation was a production method born from necessity. It relied on fewer frames per second, simplified character designs, and the clever reuse of character cycles and backgrounds. Rather than redrawing everything, Hanna-Barbera broke characters down into layers so that only the parts that needed to move, a mouth for dialogue, an arm for a wave, were animated on a held cell. This allowed a 7-minute short to be created with a mere 2,000 drawings instead of 14,000. The focus shifted from fluid, action-packed visuals to witty dialogue and strong character poses. One critic, the legendary Warner Brothers animator Chuck Jones, disparagingly referred to the style as illustrated radio. The new approach was a runaway success. The first fully animated series, The Huckleberry Hound Show, won an Emmy in 1961, the first ever awarded to a cartoon. Then came The Flintstones, a Stone Age parody of the hit sitcom The Honeymooners. When it debuted in 1960, it became the first animated series to air in prime time, a groundbreaking shift that attracted both children and adults with its clever writing and pop culture references. The studio's intellectual property, from Yogi Bear to the Jetsons, became household names. The studio was not just a business, it was an empire, built on a secret formula that turned creative constraint into immense commercial success. In 1966, Hanna-Barbera was acquired by Taft Broadcasting for $12 million. This was a pivotal moment. The company, which had been founded on a brilliant creative solution, was now a corporate asset. While William Hanna and Joseph Barbera remained in charge, the new ownership's ambition was clear: to grow the studio into a formidable competitor to Disney. The success of Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? In 1969 became a template. This show, which followed a group of meddling kids who solved mysteries by unmasking deceptive adults, was more than just a cartoon. It was an accidental social commentary on the generation gap of the era. The gang, a collection of youth archetypes from the groovy Daphne to the seemingly cynical Shaggy, tore down systems of fear created by greedy, corrupt older people. This sophisticated subtext demonstrated that even with their production shortcuts, the studio's writers and artists were still plugged into the cultural zeitgeist. But the business model demanded more. From the late 1960s to the 1980s, the studio produced a rapid-fire succession of shows that were, for the most part, carbon copies of its most successful formulas. The focus on a winning formula led to a series of superhero shows and a proliferation of Scooby-Doo clones, all designed to feed the ravenous appetite of a television schedule that needed endless, cheap content. Critics began to take notice, and according to some professional animators, the shows of the 1970s and 80s were dreadful on every level. The pressure for volume and profit pushed the company to its final, most devastating concession. In the 1970s, to reduce costs even further, Hanna-Barbera began outsourcing its animation to foreign studios, including Wang Film Productions in 1978 and Phil Cartoons in the Philippines in 1987. This move, which led to protests and lawsuits from domestic animators, was a direct result of the financial burdens placed on the studio. The art form had been reduced to a manufacturing process, and the studio became what one observer called a sweatshop, cranking out crap at supersonic speed. The end for the original Hanna-Barbera studio was not a sudden collapse, but a gradual, quiet absorption. In 1991, the Turner Broadcasting System acquired the company, valuing its library of intellectual property at $320 million. With the acquisition, William Hanna and Joseph Barbera were moved to advisory capacities, officially marking the end of their creative control. The company's vast library of shows became the backbone of Turner's new venture, the Cartoon Network, which launched in 1992. The final act came in 2001. Just 10 days before William Hanna's death. Following a merger between AOL and Time Warner, Hanna-Barbera was formally absorbed into the Warner Brothers animation division. The brand, for a time, became an in-name-only unit, a phantom limb used for distribution and marketing of its classic works. And yet, its legacy is undeniable. Hanna-Barbera's pioneering of the primetime animated sitcom with the Flintstones paved the way for modern giants like The Simpsons, Family Guy, and South Park, all of which attract large adult audiences. Their creations, from Fred Flintstone to Scooby-Doo, remain cultural icons, appearing in films, comics, and video games.